Hello friends, today we are going to see how we can automate the resource monitor into our projects. To achieve same, we have to work on few scripting to set up a framework which can be leveraged to automate the resource monitor creation. So in today we are going to see different pieces. This demo is about the part one of that. So following there will be multiple part, but on the part one we are going to cover two important aspects. One is how to automate the creation of the warehouse using procedures, and how to populate the warehouse detail like metadata table for further use. So basically, if you see that warehouse creation, when we create a warehouse, you have to use the inbuilt function called show warehouses, right? So we don't have any metadata table in the Snowflake account user schema, which can be easily queried whenever required. But in case of warehouse, or in case of resource monitor or task, like we don't have any inbuilt metadata table already available. So for this automation we are going to create a metadata table for the warehouse, and we are going to use that table for our further analysis. So without wasting any further time, I would like to start with the demo. So here I am connected with my account, trial account, and I'm going to create a database called resource monitor demo, and I'm going to use the existing public schema. And there is by default warehouse called compute WH. That's the default which comes along with your account, and I'm going to use the account admin to make my life simple. So I'm just using the existing one. Here, before going with the automation part, we have to take care of certain aspects, and we have to maintain certain standards so that we can use those as a uh, pattern to create a framework for the standardization. Likewise, so whenever we are going to create a warehouse, we have to follow certain pattern or the naming convention, so that we can use that naming convention to achieve certain features, certain things, and to maintain the standard, and to understand like for what purpose your warehouse has been created, for which environment it has been created, what kind of warehouse you are creating, and what functionality you are going to use. So we are not going to disclose what is the size and all those things on the name part, but we should make the warehouse naming like that, so that by seeing the name you can get the high level information like what kind of warehouse it is, whether this is a team warehouse or a service warehouse. So I'm going to disclose all the other details later on. So I'm just trying to give you high level information. With environment, we are going to understand whether it's created for the dev environment or the sit environment or the UAT environment or whatever, prod, pre-prod, whatever. With project, like it might happen that you have only single projects in your organization for which you are working on the Snowflake, but it might happen that you have multiple different small projects, and to differentiate the compute between different projects, you might use the project code or the project identifier to identify for which project you are giving this compute resource. Functionality is again an important feature or an important thing which identifies like what is the purpose of this warehouse you are going to use it. And so it can be like you are going to use that for the Power BI team or the ADF team, or it can be used by the DBT team, or it can be used by data loading process, or it can be used by any business analyst or whatever. Like there can be certain different bucket in which you are going to use that warehouse. So the best recommended process for warehouse is to create separate warehouses for each and every different team, and it also helps you to uh, identify the cost tagged to a particular uh, resource unit. Like if you have a team and if you want to identify which team is using how much of compute, if and you want to tag that on the high level, that which project or which group of people are using how much of compute, so that you can prepare your cost report based on that. If that is your goal or the end target, my recommendation would be to use a standard naming convention, which will help you to identify or segregate the data based on the logic you will create the warehouse name. So the recommendation from my end would be the warehouse. That's the standard name should start with, and then the type. It can be a team warehouse and it can be a service warehouse. What do you mean by the team warehouse? If it's being used by the human, it should be a team warehouse, so that we are aware that this compute is being by the group of human use. When we say service warehouse, it can be any integration application or any other application which is going to use, like Power BI is an integration, right? So it's not non-human user. So it's not a person who is going to use, it's a application which is going to use. Like the pipeline, if you are giving a pipeline for, so it's not a human one, but you want to calculate the uses of that particular warehouse type into some of your cost report. So you can divide your warehouse type based on team or the service. Similarly, you might want to segregate your report based on the environment. You are least bothered about what is the convention or dev environment, because you are aware this at the dev environment you are doing lots of trial and error methods, so you might end up in costing more. But you are more aware, means like you are more concerned about the production, pre-prod or the UAT, where you don't want that people should misuse the compute. So you want to also understand which portion of the uh, area or from where you are getting most impact of the cost, so that you can target those area and understand the core reason behind the cost of that warehouse. So in that case, this environment also helps a lot, because you are segregating, you are creating per environment basis. So it helps you to narrow down the area where the billing is coming from. Similarly, like I already explained you in the beginning, that a project also helps in the multi-project environment. If it's a single project, it might not be that much useful for you, because for all the projects it will be the same code or the identifier. But in case you are working with multiple projects, it helps you to differentiate between project X versus project Y. So in that case, because both the warehouse will have the similar type, similar environment, but the project is different. So that helps you to differentiate between the compute where it is being actually used. Now within the project also there are multiple teams, as I explained. It can be Power BI team, it can be ADF team, it can be DBT team, it can be XYZ different another, means like multiple different types of teams. So it's always good if you can create the functionality based on the what is the functionality of that warehouse for which you are going to use that. And similarly, it might happen that you have a very long team, say Power BI team is a team of 10 people, and there is also a different level of user. So it might be that there is Power BI team who is only analyzing the report, and there is another team who is the Power BI developer team. But in both the cases, all the other things might remain same. So what you can do, you can put it like 01 and 02, so that it will easily differentiate between your team, that 01 belongs to this group, 02 belongs to this group. In this helps when you have a big team and you want to divide or you want to create a multiple warehouse, but you want to divide between them easily. So this helps to differentiate between them. So this is all about standard, and this is the main core of our automation for creation of the warehouse. Because creation of warehouse is very simple, it's just a create warehouse statement. But how to automate this is totally depend upon what is the naming convention you are trying to understand. So this is one of the example which I say suggest you, but there can be 10 different types of pattern you want to use based on your projects, based on your project using business process. So it's always okay to use your pattern. So this is just one of the way of doing thing automation. It can be different, it can be also done on a different way. So I'm just laying out one pattern how to automate this, and let's see how it goes. So this is one of the thing, and today, so I'm going to create a procedure And this procedure is going to take the parameter for all the different parameter you are seeing over here as in the naming convention. And apart from this, I'm also going to take certain parameter for the warehouse. So because I don't want to create the warehouse with a static value on my own as a standard for every warehouse, rather than I want to create it dynamically. So if a user pass the value, it will create the warehouse based on that values using the same naming standard. Regardless of different parameters can be changed on the warehouse part. Like say if I have a requirement that I want to create a warehouse with auto resume off, auto resume on, right? So it changed. I want to change the auto shutdown time, right? So if I want to change the max cluster, I want to change the min cluster, right? So it differentiate between different business needs. So I don't want it to keep anything as a static from the procedure point of view, but we can always put a default value if somebody is not willing to provide any value for any parameter except few of the mandatory stuff which is mentioned over here, or few more. It will take all the default value and it will create. So how we are going to do is like simple. I'm going to create a procedure. I'm putting everything whichever I'm using on the create warehouse part in the parameter part. Once I get the parameter, I will check. So in this procedure, I'm not putting lots of code, but the whole idea is you can check all the parameters, and you if that parameter is null, you can provide the default value and all those fancy stuff. I'm not going to use those stuff because this is a small demo, but the idea is you can put those all validation and you can provide the default value if it's null. Once you validate all the parameter, you can. So what I'm doing, I'm creating a warehouse name by concatenating the variable which I'm passing from here, and then I'm putting this name into the create warehouse if not exist. So I'm only creating the warehouse if it not exist. If it already exists, I'm skipping that part. And I'm putting all the variables on the proper place with the syntax and catching any error. So if there is any error, it's going to raise the alarm. If there is no error, it will create the warehouse. So this is one of the part, and I'm also calling the populate means like calling a proc which will populate the all resource monitor. We will see later on how this is a separate part which I am covering after this procedure, but this is basically a procedure which I am calling to populate the metadata table. So I will explain you what this procedure do on the later stage, but the only purpose is like it will create the warehouse and then it will populate the table, and it will return a success message, and if there is any failure it will return the failure message. So the procedure is quite simple, and once I execute this it will create the warehouse. So let me create this. So let me execute this and you will see that there is one procedure got created. So now you can see there is one procedure got created here, and these are the arguments for this procedure. So now that the procedure has been created, I would like to, so at the moment if I go on the warehouse tab, you will see there is only one warehouse. But I would like to create multiple procedures based on my different team, as I explained you on the first step. So what I am going to do is like I'm going to call this procedure which I just created with different parameters. Obviously, like I want to track different things. Like I want to create the team warehouse. I wanted to create the team warehouse for the finance project, for the procurement project, or for the uh, purchase project. Like there are multiple projects. I am just creating a dummy project, and I am going to create for different functionality like data load, Power BI, analyst, tester, developer, DBT. Similarly, I'm going to create a service warehouse for my DBT. ADO means pipeline, PBI means Power BI. Similarly, the same thing I'm going to create for the procurement and for the purchase project. So the same details for different combination I'm going to create. For all the warehouse, I'm going to create the extra small, but it's up to you what you want to use. So there are different combination of sizes, t-shirt sizes. If I go here, I can show you the different sizes. So there are different sizes, extra small, small, medium, whatever you want, you can pass it over here. with the valid values. If that values is not valid, it will fail. And then min cluster, max cluster. I wanted to keep it simple, so I have created all the basic with the non-multi-cluster warehouse. I wanted to keep the standard policy. The timer term for the warehouse is 300 seconds. That's 5 minutes. It will then shut down. And I also wanted to do one very important thing, like I wanted to keep track of the person who is created this warehouse. So I'm passing this email ID, just a sample. It can be a name, it can be email ID or whatever you want. Just you need an identifier who created this warehouse. Why I am doing this is because uh, it might think like a silly at this moment, but going forward when you have hundreds of warehouse, it will be difficult for your admin team to identify who created this warehouse and what was the purpose. If you have that certain context behind this, like it can be a person name, you have to decide what you want to keep. It can be email ID or it can be a ticket number for which you are going to create the warehouse. So it's totally upon you what you want to keep that as an identifier. I'm just giving one sample that I wanted to keep the email ID, and then inside the warehouse creation, what I'm doing is like I'm putting that on the comment part. But it's up to you what you want to put. Basically you can put any name, maybe Rajiv Gupta like this, or you can put any email ID, or you can put the ticket number if this warehouse is being created part of any request by any team member, right? So it's just a information thing which you want to put on the comment, and later on you can utilize that uh, for further analysis in the future if you want to do, or if you want to connect with that person, like what was the reason we have created. So that initially it doesn't comes up, but at on the later stage, when you are doing the maintenance of the project, it always comes up like why we created this, why there is so much a warehouse. So then we need a context to connect to the people to understand what was the reason. And this kind of information, if you it created pre-hand, it helps a lot at that moment. So just a suggestion. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the database and the warehouse, and I'm going to create this multiple warehouse which I have just used. So if I am going to execute this, it will create all the warehouses. So you will see around 25 execution statements. So out of this, I believe it's 18 or 20 warehouse it will create. So let's see, it's going to complete very soon. And then it will print the all the warehouses. So now you see that I have 21 warehouses, out of which this compute warehouse was the default one. But out of this, 20 warehouse has been created with this very standard way, wherein if you see the name, you will able to identify what is the purpose of that warehouse. Also, along with that, if you go on right hand side, you will see that different auto suspend timing has been mentioned based on my requirement. And then if you go further right, you will see that on the comment section I have also populated like who has created the warehouse. So obviously here all the name belongs to me, but it can be different people. So this is the thing which we always get as part of show warehouse. There is no metadata table if you go on the Snowflake side. And if you see on the account uses, you will never get any information for the warehouse except the metering of the warehouse. But there is no table called all warehouse or warehouse history or whatever like you have for user tags and tables, stages and all. You don't get any metadata information in that form of metadata table in account user schema. And it's always difficult to execute and get the information on the query pattern if you want to use that on the scripting. So the next step is what I am going to do is like I want to store this information what you are getting over here into a table, and for that I am also going to create a procedure so that we can further use that procedure into some of our further demo part 1 or part 2, right? Okay, so if you are now able to understand what I mean is like I'm going to create a table called all warehouses, which is not going to store all the information from the warehouse function here. Apart from that, like I'm also going to store some of the other information which is not present on warehouse, so warehouse table. So warehouse always show only the information related to the warehouse, right? But apart from this, I am also going to store some other information which I am storing as part of the name of the warehouse. So I can always fetch the detail and split the detail and get the information out of warehouse name. But rather than doing that, I wanted to keep that SP ready because I'm going to use the procedure for that. So what I'm going to do is like I'm going to store the account name for which this warehouse will be there, warehouse type, environment, and for which project. So all this information I am going to fetch from the name and store it here, and rest all the other information which I believe is required is like I'm going to fetch from the so warehouses and store in this table. So let's first create that table. So now if I execute and refresh, you will see that the all warehouse table has been created with the all the required columns. Now what I'm going to do is like I'm going to create a procedure, and this procedure will not have any parameter because I'm not going to use any parameter to pass. I'm just going to execute the show warehouses, and then I'm going to overwrite the information into this table all warehouses whenever I execute, because this information is coming from the show warehouses, and whatever is latest or the valid warehouses will always show under the show warehouses. So what I'm going to use is like I'm going to execute this and always overwrite the value of all warehouses. So whenever I execute this procedure and after that if I query all warehouses, it will always give me the latest data. That's the idea behind of creating this. So it's going to execute and it will create, and it is by default I'm going to ignore the compute warehouse because that's the initial warehouse and don't want to include in this table. So I'm going to create this warehouse, populate insert all warehouse procedure. Once I created this procedure, I'm going to execute this. So if I execute this, you will not see any data, but if I execute this, it will populate with around 20 rows. So it will given me the messages succeeded that all the value has been inserted into the all warehouses. If I execute this now, you will see 20 rows as I said, with all the information like what is the account name, what is the warehouse type, right? So some are team, some are service, some are in what are the environment. So all the environment for me was dev, and then the project, procurement, purchase, finance, and then the name of the warehouse and the size of the warehouse, policy, type, and all those information including resource monitor. So at the moment we don't have any resource monitor in our account, but going forward as in the future demo, we will see how to create the resource monitor and how to tag the warehouse to the resource monitor. So those are for the future demo, but for today demo, this was all we mean to showcase. Now what all we have created, so if we go and see the summary, is like we have created a table which is all warehouses, which will store all the information of all the valid or eligible warehouses, including other metadata column which I wanted to store apart, means like except whatever information I am getting from the show warehouses. So this is one of the warehouse procedure which I am also calling during the create warehouse. If you remember, I said that I will explain you later. So now you understand that why I am executing this, because whenever I am creating any warehouse, I want my all warehouse table to be up to date. So rather than executing every time manually this procedure, what I wanted to do is like whenever somebody creates any procedure warehouse, it will automatically populate the table, and whenever I execute this all warehouse table, by default I will always get the latest data. The only prerequisite for this is like we are not going to create any warehouse manually, because in that scenario, unless this procedure is being executed, we will not able to store the data, including if we have not maintaining the proper naming convention. It will be also difficult and it might fail because we are doing all the things based on certain pattern of the name. So we have to keep this in mind, that no manual creation of the warehouse once this framework is in place, and whenever we will create the warehouse, it will automatically populate the all warehouse table. So now we don't have to rely on show warehouse every time manually in C, but it will automatically populate this all warehouses. If I execute show procedure, you will see two procedure has been created till now. So we see create warehouse for creating the warehouse, proc insert all warehouse to populate the all warehouse table. So now you have one table, two procedures for this demo created, and now we have already automated how we can create the warehouse and populate all warehouse table. So that's all for today demo. I hope you found this demo useful and helpful. If you like my channel, please subscribe to my channel and like my videos. Thank you.